Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Drawing Conclusions. I'm your host, Randall Hampton. I'm super excited tonight because I have a very special guest from the D4 D&D Deep Dive channel over on YouTube, Colby Polson.
How's it going, everybody? Hey, Randall, how you doing?
Hey,
Thanks for having
hey.
me. I appreciate the intro draw work. Like, I feel like you made my biceps look really big. I'm like, I need to use that maybe as my avatar or something,
We'll put it
for
out there for you, yeah.
yeah, it's
Um,
awesome.
So, for everybody that doesn't know what Drawing Conclusions is, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm so happy that you could be here with us. Drawing Conclusions is a chance for me to sit down and speak with industry experts, influencers, and talk about the IPs that really drive us, that really feed our passions, the things that make us really want to get up in the morning and keep going. So, what will happen is I'll sit and I'll talk with a guest about Harry Potter. And while we're talking about Harry Potter, I'll draw Harry Potter or some characters from that. Tonight, I have Colby Polson with me. Colby does. You know what? I'm going to let Colby tell me what he does because the way I phrase it may trigger a few people. So I'm going to let you do it. Colby, go ahead and tell us what we're going to be talking about. D&D first of all. We're going to like the sessions that we've been doing the last few weeks have been very D&D centric, and I want to keep going that tonight. So Colby, why don't you tell me what it is that you do over at D4?
Sure. How about this? I'll give you my standard intro to my
Sure.
videos, which goes something like this. Um, you know, Welcome to D&D Optimized, which is part of the D4 network. This is the show where every week we take one, sometimes two characters for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. We create a character to play in game, and we theory craft about them. I crunch the numbers, and I basically try to create a character that is like both really fun but also really powerful to play in game. And so, what I always tell my viewers is, if you enjoy like creating characters in D&D almost as much as playing the actual game itself, then like this is the show for you. So welcome home. So yeah, it's just kind of a real focus on, like, I love character creation in D&D. I really do. Like, it's one of my favorite aspects of the game, and I love to just kind of look at all the different classes and how could I bring these together, and what kind of synergy could I create, using this feat or that spell, or this ability score, or these subclasses, etc. And just trying to create like a fun, cool, unique, powerful character for D&D. So yeah.
Fantastic. So let me ask this. Is this specifically min-maxing? Is this like finding the best way to do the one type of character,
I,
or how would you classify it?
I think that's part of it,
Okay.
definitely, but it's not just that. I guess I would say usually what I try to do. Well, let me put it this way: when I first started the channel, it was kind of with the intent to say, okay, I want to look at like all of the best, like most powerful, according to the larger D&D community, characters that you can play out there, like build them as powerfully as possible to do like as much damage as possible or whatever, and like compare them to each other, and also take a look at like, how do they stack up against one another, but also depending on what level they're at and against what enemy armor class, and et cetera, et cetera. But once I got through those first few, right, where it was like, okay, like I think I've kind of established and kind of gone after the most sort of well-known archetypes and character builds and stuff, like I got a little bit more into, let's take a concept and see how far we can stretch that. So, I do like, I want to build a sorcerer, but the only way they can do damage is by touching somebody. So like I put that limitation on myself, right?
Ooh,
And then
okay.
go, okay, now how far can I stretch that? What spells would I need to use? What feats could I give myself, right? Or for example, I did one that was called like the Pokemon trainer. That was basically
Yes.
like I want to see how much damage I could do as a character where I can't actually ever make an attack myself. I can only like do things via my little minions and stuff. You know what I mean? That I summon and stuff like that. So, that's not every build, but I try and do tank builds. I do support builds. I do damage builds, burst damage, sustain damage, et cetera, and just find stuff that is interesting and fun. And sometimes I work within kind of a tight confine, like today, and and sometimes it's a little bit more freeform. Like, hey, people have been wanting to see, this particular subclass. So how would you optimize or min max, this subclass and make it really powerful? Well, okay, let's take a look and, see what we do. So it's kind of all over the board, but yeah.
That I'm glad that you clarified that first off, because when I first found your channel and I first started watching your videos, I was sitting there, I'm like, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, I wonder two things, and I'll ask you this, the first one now. When did you first start playing tabletop RPGs or D&D or whichever type of game you want?
It was D&D. And it was junior high, middle school. So, seventh grade, I was probably 12, 11 maybe, just with some friends. And it was AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. We played that for probably 4 years up until like my sophomore year of high school, 10th grade. And then I think the social stigma became too much for my friends, and they just were like, we can't do it anymore. Like, we're social pariahs. I would have kept playing. I really would have. I was like, I don't care. Like, this is fun, and it's what I love, and I want to do it. And it wasn't until like 4 years ago where I basically got my current group of friends that I play with right now. We all, at the time anyway, worked at the same company, and everyone but me was on the dev team, the software engineer, development team, or like the customer support and service team. And then there was me, and I heard them talking one day at lunch, and it sounded like they were talking about D&D, and I kind of, slid down and was like, hey, you guys talking about D&D? And if so, like, I want to play. So, how can I get in?
That's how it always starts. You hear that whisper, and you're like, you can't help but kind of linger on the edge of the conversation and just kind of force your way in.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so we've been playing together since 5th edition.
Nice. Very good, very good. And what's funny is this is actually a very similar story to me, because I started playing AD&D way back in middle school. Back in the 90s, and then kept going through. There were breaks in periods where it was sparse, where we didn't get to play very much. And then what's actually fun is I still got to go back and play with the same group of friends from high school.
That's awesome.
And still get to play with
that's great.
Pre-pandemic, we were still trying to play regularly, but yeah, so that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna get started on the drawing and get started on the build. And while we're doing the build, so you're gonna be doing your spiel, talking about how you decided on this character class, that kind of thing. We're gonna throw it to the chat every once in a while, whenever we can, to get their input on the illustration.
Cool.
So I'm gonna be drawing this character while Colby is reading off his build, and we're gonna try and go from levels 1 to 20, just like he normally does. And we're gonna have the breaks, just like you normally do, to rattle off a few statistics,
right,
and kind of crunch the numbers, because you're such a numbers guy.
I am.
You're such a numbers guy.
Which is surprising because I did like a bachelor's and even like a master's degree in English literature, and I hated math, but for some reason. When it comes to like D&D, I don't know. Like, I can't get enough of the spreadsheets and the graphs and for sure.
Fantastic. All right. So we're gonna go to the chat when we can and get a little bit of input from them. I'm gonna be going, and we're gonna try and get this entire thing done here tonight on stream for Colby, and then he's gonna have it actually up on his YouTube channel, up on D4 tomorrow.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yep, tomorrow morning, as long as I can get it edited tonight. I actually, as soon as we're done, I'm going to our weekly game. And then I'll come home and try and get it edited and uploaded so that it'll be ready to go by 10 a.m. Mountain Time tomorrow morning.
All right, sounds good. All right.
I might not get a lot of sleep, but...
So, Colby, let's get started. What are we doing tonight?
Okay. So let me just say thank you for having me. Super excited. I've been looking forward to this ever since you reached out a few weeks ago to say, and you showed me some of your art, and I was like, yeah, like this would be so much fun to like do a build and have you like draw it not knowing beforehand what it was going to be and just kind of
Yeah.
see what you come up with, right?
Yeah. Like point of fact, I have no idea what we're doing. I have no clue. So this is all
Yeah.
going to be off the cuff, and we're gonna try and make it happen as we're going. So
Right. So, okay. Oh, and also I wanted to mention this is actually going to be my 50th episode.
all right,
So that's kind of cool.
fantastic.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a momentous occasion. I'm going to hit my 1 year anniversary in about a week and a half of the channel, and I've only missed 1 week so far. So anyway,
Good deal.
okay, let me give a little preamble, little intro to the character here.
Okay.
So and just apologies in advance. I'm probably going to be reading my notes a lot. Usually I don't do this live. And so I have a chance to like sort of read ahead, and then I can kind of look at the camera while I talk, and then stop and then read ahead.
This is going to get that improv skill going, so you can have the notes and see how you build.
Yeah. So, okay, occasionally I get requests from my viewers, right, to do not like an unoptimized build, though I do get those occasionally as well, but to take like a subclass or a spell or a weapon or a feat that's thought of as sort of suboptimal, kind of weak, and make it like as good as possible. Kind of like I've mentioned already with a couple examples, right? To try and like optimize a sort of thought of suboptimal, something that's thought of as suboptimal. And like I say, I've done that a few times. But of those requests that I get, probably the most common I get is to do a whip-based build. Do a character that uses the whip as their weapon. Everyone wants a whip build. I get it. Okay. It's cool, right? Thematically, right? Indiana Jones, Trevor Belmont, they're awesome. But the truth is, in D&D, mechanically speaking, the whip is a pretty lowly and humble weapon, right?
It's not a great weapon.
It's not. It's only a D4 of damage, which is like the smallest die you can get, right? It doesn't inherently do anything according to the rules as written. It doesn't really inherently do anything that you'd think a whip could do, like tie somebody up or trip them up, or you know what I mean? Anything like that. Knock them prone, wrap around them to restrain them, anything like that, right? The only thing that's really unique about it, as far as I know, is it's the only reach weapon in game that is also a finesse weapon. So a reach weapon meaning that you can attack from 10 feet away as opposed to 5 feet away, right? And finesse is important for some character classes because they get certain benefits if they're using a finesse weapon. So when I think about, how do I create a character built around a whip? My initial thought is, how do I take advantage of that uniqueness, right? First up, the question is, I think, well, what character really loves finesse weapons? The answer is a rogue, right? Because you need a finesse weapon in order to take advantage of sneak attack damage. And one great thing about having a reach weapon that gives you that 10-foot range is that it's a lot easier to sort of get in and out of combat range, so you can avoid taking opportunity attacks from your enemies, right? When you move out of their range, you can kind of stand back and hit them without them being able to retaliate if you were to move away to safety, right? Okay. Now, of course, rogues can generally already do a pretty good job of avoiding those opportunity attacks because as a bonus action, they can disengage, right? They get cunning action at second level. And so they could still run away anyway. And for that matter, let's see, sorry. they can use ranged weapons to still get sneak attack damage. They don't have to do melee weapons to get sneak attack, right? So what I really tried to focus on when building around the whip was to do a rogue that made good use of both their bonus action, so that they didn't need to use that disengage cunning action, right? But and found a way to like make doing melee damage more desirable than range damage, so that the whip felt like the only way to do all the things that we're trying to do in one build, right? And not just like, here's a rogue build that would work with pretty much any weapon, but for flavor you could use a whip. You know what I mean? Like I want it to be like, no, we have to use a whip in order to do all the things that we're trying to do. So As far as finding ways to buff melee damage, I think the best ways available to us as like a non-pole arm, non-heavy weapon user who wanted to be a rogue is concerned were like burst damage focused. So for those who don't know, like when I build characters with an emphasis on damage, I tend to go one of two routes, right? I either build them for sustained damage, meaning they do like really good, consistent damage round after round without expending a lot of resources, or so that they could do that for an entire combat round, or ideally multiple combat rounds in a day, right? Or I build them for like burst damage. Sometimes people call that nova damage, which tends to be like where you dump a ton of resources into one big, huge round of combat with the intent to like completely eliminate or nearly eliminate an enemy, or sometimes multiple enemies, right at the start of the fight, so as to like tip the odds of the fight in your party's favor.
Sure.
This build is going to be a nova or a burst damage build, the latter, right? For reasons kind of that I've mentioned, but I will also explain further as we go. But to tell you the truth, it's a little bit almost of a hybrid build between the two, which I was really pleased with, and I'll get into that later. But I will add that in the final thoughts, after the build is done, I give a little final thoughts blurb, and I will plan on giving a version of the build that differs slightly. And ends up doing even more burst damage in a single round than what we're going to be discussing, at the expense of expending more resources and being like less strong in subsequent rounds. I didn't like the feel of that version of the character as much, but if your aim is to do like the absolute maximum amount of damage in a single round, this alternative might be a little bit better. But suffice to say, I was super happy with how it all turned out, and so, without any further ado, I present episode 50, the Whip Cracker. Maybe the Thunder Whip, or like the Whip of Doom. I don't know. I couldn't think of it. I'm not great at naming things.
We'll find an 80s movie to base the name off of later.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're enjoying the episode. Just wanted to interrupt for a brief moment to remind you that Homebrewed Games, who have created the Druids, the Secrets of the Primal Circle, that I talked about first in the Wolf and the Coyote episode, right over there. Their Kickstarter has officially launched. So if you haven't checked it out yet, if you're not backing it, you absolutely should. I've really been impressed with this book that these guys put out. We actually played a one-shot a couple of weeks ago with Matt and Seamus over at Homebrewed Games. Preston and I did. We had a lot of fun. I made a Dire Druid, and it was awesome. It was a Dire Druid of the Wolf, kind of that new character class that I talked about when I first was mentioning this book. But again, just as a reminder for those who maybe didn't see that episode, this is a homebrew compendium for 5th edition that is all about druids, and it goes into additional lore. It's got all kinds of new druid subclasses, new circles, a new class, which is kind of like a cross between a barbarian and a druid, maybe I would say. They're kind of a half martial, half caster type, but druid focused, and a lot of fun to play. They kind of can become like these werebeasts, but there's all kinds of other stuff in here. New spells, new magic items, a new bestiary. I actually wanted to talk a little bit, just for a minute, about some of the cool spells that you can get. Anything from Sunstone to Slippery Step, Quicksand, Raven Swarm, Ripclaw, Keen Edge, which I actually used in our little one-shot, Flaming Serpent, all these great like nature-based, druid-based type spells. Let me just pick one of my favorites here to read to you very briefly. This is just so cool, so on point for a nature lover, and it's called Woodland Giant. It's a 4th level conjuration spell. It requires concentration and has a range of 60 feet. And it says, a tree suddenly sprouts in an unoccupied square. You can see on the ground within range. The tree's trunk is 5 feet wide and up to 20 feet tall, while its branches extend to every space within 10 feet of the trunk. Creatures you choose within 10 feet of the trunk when the tree first arises must make a dex save or take 6d6 bludgeoning damage and be knocked prone. On a successful save, the damage is halved and the creature is not knocked prone. For the duration, the tree provides half cover to creatures you choose within 10 feet of its trunk as the branches move to provide protection. So it's like you kind of summon your own little whomping willow, and it gives both like an area of effect, damage, and potential, knocking prone, and then continues to provide half cover for you and all of your allies after you summon it. So it's just really cool. All kinds of fantastic stuff in the book. I hope that you guys will check out the Kickstarter. Again, it's launched now. I'll make sure to put a link to it in the video description. But please go ahead and back these guys. They are, of course, a sponsor for the video today and for the next couple, just while I try and get everybody excited about what they're doing over there. So go check them out. Okay, back to the show.
That was my long prelude. So level 1, we're just going to go level by level and talk about like all the things that we get and all the decisions that we make. And you're going to, and this is going to give you a lot of stuff to start drawing with. So first of all, for your class, you're actually going to be a paladin at level 1. I do this all the time. I say, we're going to do a rogue build. Okay, level 1 paladin.
Paladin. Okay.
Yes. So we're a paladin. I would have started rogue here actually, but rogues don't get proficiency with whips or shields, which I wanted. So I was planning on taking some paladin levels eventually anyway. Paladins start off proficient in all martial weapons and armor and things. So I was like, all right, we're going to start at level 1 with the pally. It doesn't hurt too bad to start here instead, and it makes our early game a little stronger due to our starting equipment, more hit points. Than we would have been with rogue, so I don't feel too bad. As for the race, here we go. We're gonna go Aarakocra. Are you familiar with the Aarakocra?
The birdmen, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. So I have recommended an Aarakocra as like an alternate in builds before, but I think this is like the first time that I'm straight up just saying this needs to be the number 1 choice for this character. Okay. Here's the thing. Having reach for a rogue is great and everything, but kind of like I've said, like swashbucklers, for example, a subclass, right, can already get away from their enemies without taking an opportunity attack just by like making an attack against them. Every other rogue, like I've said, can just disengage as a bonus action thanks to cunning action. And so there's not a lot of risk for rogues in generally. So simply attacking from 5 feet further away with a reach weapon doesn't seem all that special for rogues in and of itself, in my opinion. The whip isn't a pole arm, obviously, so we can't do like the cool things that most reach weapons let us do via like the pole arm master feat and the great weapon master feat. And so to me, then the best way to take advantage of our reach here is to simply fly above the enemies and bring the lightning crack and thunder of your whip from on high, raining down pain like Thor himself. And Aarakocras are the best ones, in my opinion, if we want to play a character who's just flying all the time from level 1, from the get-go, because they get flight from day 1.
This is the first time we can actually have the chat be involved, though, because Aarakocra does not I mean, there's a wide range of species. What type of birdman or bird woman or bird person are we doing here? Give me a couple of suggestions while Colby keeps going, and then I'll incorporate that into what the character looks like. All right. Okay. So in the chat, holla at me.
Suggest if you want a hawk or an eagle or a falcon or a pigeon,
raven. Like you know what I mean? Like more of a, if we're gonna go rogue, raven or crow.
A crow. I like it.
That'd be kind of a cool.
I like it. All right. So.
What? Laser Judas is just trying to make things.
Hey, I mean, whippoorwill. There's a little pun there that could,
Hold on. I gotta look at this. I gotta look and see what this bird looks like. Because if it looks cool, we're absolutely doing it.
All right.
Oh, it actually does look pretty cool. Hummingbird. Oh, how would that look? All right, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. All right, You keep reading and people keep commenting. I'm going to keep going because I go long, as my viewers know. I like owls too. That's cool. So, okay, so we need to figure out our ability scores. I always assume that we're going the point buy method to figure out our abilities. And I use Tasha's Cauldron of Everything that tells us that we can assign our like plus ability score modifiers to whichever ability we want. So I'm going to say start with a 15 dexterity plus 2. Start with a 15 charisma and take your +1 bonus there. So we have a 17 dex and a 16 charisma, and then a 13 strength. We're going to need the strength for the Pally multi-class. Like I say, using Tasha's, using point buy, that's kind of our starting stats. If you have any other points you can spend, put them where you want. As for equipment, we're going to start off with pretty standard stuff. Chainmail, a shield, and your whip, of course. We will be switching to leather armor, I think, on this character once we want to start being stealthy and kind of fill that rogue role. So probably the majority of our career we'd be in like leather or studded leather or whatever. Our AC will drop a bit when that change happens until we get our dexterity higher, right? But honestly, like, my hope is that you'll very rarely be getting hit with this build. You'll ideally be flying above your enemies from 10 feet away, right? And so you're going to be out of reach of melee enemies' attacks unless they also have a reach weapon, right? Or a reach ability, right? Of course, if they're ranged, or a flying creature themselves, or they're a spellcaster, they have a net or something like that, you might run into some difficulty. But I think for most of us, for most of our encounters, we're going to be able to just kind of hover above the battlefield and just raining down that whip damage without being too worried about taking a lot of damage in return from our enemies. Let's see. The only thing better than being able to disengage as a bonus action is not needing to even disengage at all, because the enemies just can't reach you, right? So at level 1 as a paladin, we get the Divine Sense ability. It's some nice utility. It lets us detect undead, fiends, or celestials within 60 feet of us and limited number of times per day. And then, of course, we get the Lay on Hands ability as a paladin level 1, which gives you a pool of points that you can spend to heal yourself or others, or even cure disease or poison. You get 5 times your paladin level in points, and each point is worth 1 hit point that you can use to kind of heal yourself or others, which is nice. Okay, at level 2, we get a fighting style as a paladin, and we'll be using the whip, which is a one-handed weapon, our entire career, so we might as well bump it as much as possible, right? And the dueling fighting style lets us add 2 damage to our weapon attacks if we're just using a one-handed weapon and no other weapons in our other hand, and we won't be, we'll just be using a shield, right? So it makes that kind of lowly D4 whip damage feel just a little bit better. We get to bump it just a smidgen. Paladins also get their spell casting at level 2.
Yes.
And there are a few that we should consider, I think. Cure wounds, obviously if you need some additional healing and you kind of want to maybe magnify your support capabilities a little bit. 1d8 plus spell casting modifier and healing that you can do as an action. Not bad in a pinch. We could also take Bless, which is one of the best buffs in the game, in my opinion, allowing us, with our concentration, we can bless up to 3 characters, including ourselves, so that we can add an extra 1d4 on every attack roll and saving throw. What are we getting? Only
Laser Judas, I need you in my chat more often, because he says a freaking emu would be hilarious.
An ostrich?
An ostrich, yeah. Fantastic.
That's great.
Sorry,
That's
I'm sorry.
Great. No, don't apologize.
Wow. Kookaburras, you can...
That's awesome.
Wow, these are great. These are great suggestions. Thank you.
And I apologize that the sun is coming in through the slats in my window, so I'm kind of marked up, but whatever.
I want it, guys. I'm gonna say it right now. I'm doing the Whip-poorwill because the Whip-poorwill, because I think that's just poetic. So
it's too good, right? Yeah,
it's too
can't.
good. That's what we're going with. So
Okay. The Whip-poorwill.
that's what it is. So
Awesome. My friend Corey actually recommended that I name the build the Whippoorwill. So I might have to do that now. I might have to change when I put up the title of the episode. Okay. So I was talking about bless. Bless requires our concentration. Unfortunately, I don't think we would be using it that often because our concentration is going to be spoken for. With this other spell that I'm about to mention, I've actually never used this spell or even talked about it in any of my builds previously, I don't think, and it is Thunderous Smite. So, and some of my viewers are probably mildly to incredibly shocked right now because it's a very inefficient spell, I think. Not very, but it is an inefficient spell. So it lets you, Thunderous Smite lets you as a bonus action, so you cast it as a bonus action, and then using your concentration, basically on your next attack that you make, you deal an extra 2d6 thunder damage. Well, on the next time you hit an enemy, right? You also get a little bonus of pushing them 10 feet away from you and knocking them prone if they fail a strength saving throw. Now, the problem is, once you hit and do that damage, the spell ends. So you just burned a spell slot for 2d6 of damage, basically one time. So some people might be asking, why would you waste a spell slot on something for 2d6 damage when Divine Smite, which I'll talk about in a second, does 2d8 damage for the same spell slot, right? Two reasons. First off, it's so freaking on point thematically that I could not resist, right? We are cracking that whip as hard and as loudly, frankly, as we can. So it's a kaboom, whip crack for thunder damage because it I think it says that it makes a noise like a thunderous boom that you can hear from 300 feet away or something like that. I'm taking the crack part of the whip crack very seriously. Secondly, like I said, we're trying to focus on burst damage here, meaning doing as much damage as possible in a single round. So while you might get a teeny bit more damage over time by saving that spell slot for like next round for another smite, right? The idea here for us is to hit the target as hard as we can on that first round in an attempt to take out the enemy like as quickly as possible, ideally before they get a chance to take their turn, right? And thus kind of start to win the war of attrition in the battle for action economy. Okay. Also at Paladin level 2, we get Divine Smite. So speaking of Divine Smite, this is what we get here. We're basically told that when we hit a creature with a melee attack, we can add 2d8 radiant damage to that hit, plus 1d8 more if against fiends and undead, and then it goes up by 1d8 for each additional spell level we use, capping at a 5d8 total, right? Or 6d8 if they're an undead or fiend. So now our whip is cracking with both a thunderous boom and a dose of divine righteousness, right? Okay. So that's level 2, and that's our pally dip. At level 3, we are starting with our rogue levels, and like I mentioned, I mentioned earlier that we're kind of like Thor. Maybe a more apt metaphor here would be Loki, because you might be a little bit mischievous here, and even more so when we get our subclass here, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay. When I multi-class my characters, just a little sidebar here, I do always like to recommend that we either like spend some time thinking about why our character's story is leading them in this direction now, and sort of often provide like a potential example character arc story myself. Or sometimes, if we're multi-classing a lot and or bouncing back and forth between like a lot of different classes and things at different levels, that we just kind of decide, hey, this character is essentially a custom class, right? In this case, maybe I'm not making a pally, rogue, whatever. I'm making a divine trickster or a lawful infiltrator or a double agent or something like that, and just decide for this unique sort of class I'm creating, I just happen to like take 2 levels of paladin and then X levels of rogue and then maybe Y levels of something else later, et cetera, et cetera. Either way, I definitely recommend talking it over with your dungeon master, figuring out what they are most comfortable with, and sort of build your character story together, right? That's what a good DM will do. So some people might be uncomfortable with a paladin and a rogue being multi-classed in the same character. I know like one of my DMs actually is a little bit uncomfortable with that. So for me, I would probably have to come up with a really good story reason for why this character, who is like so interested in the cause of justice and righteousness, is now suddenly taking rogue levels. I think for me, like I would probably say that maybe they were in the service of like a more mischievous god, like Loki or something, where like moving into rogue wouldn't feel quite so alien. Or better yet, maybe you're given an assignment by like a higher member of your order to like infiltrate and go undercover into another like less lawful and just organization to like disrupt their sinister plans, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking, is like the infiltrator idea, the cloak and dagger type aspect of what the rogue is.
You're like if any class in D&D is a cop, it's a paladin, right? And so you're like this cop detective paladin, and your sergeant is like, I need you to infiltrate the cult of the dragon. So you're going undercover, and so you need some additional training here in like the art of subterfuge and misdirection and trickery and things like that. So we are taking some rogue levels, and I'm looking over here at what you're drawing, and I can't believe you've already like done all of that. That looks amazing already. I can't wait to see the end product. That's fantastic.
I just want to say, I didn't know it was going to be a Birdman. I had no idea. I think I've done maybe one commission of an Aarakocra so far. Since I've been doing D&D characters for people, I think I've only been requested once to do an Aarakocra.
Awesome.
So this is fun. This is good. This is outside of the comfort zone. I'm down for it.
Good. All right, so as a rogue level 1, you get expertise. Expertise is fantastic. It lets us take a skill that we're proficient in, and or our skill like with thieves tools, and like double our proficiency bonus for two of them, right? I really do envision this character primarily as a rogue. We're taking more rogue levels than anything, so they would be fulfilling like all of the rogue duties and responsibilities of like stealthing, scouting, picking locks, disarming traps, etc., etc. So if it were me, I would probably take my expertise in stealth and like thieves tools, but it doesn't impact our damage all that much either way. So take what you think is best for your character. We get Thieves' Cant, which is a nice little like role play / utility ability that lets us communicate with and read hidden messages of other thieves. And then of course we get that quintessential rogue ability, Sneak Attack. So once per turn, we can deal extra damage when we hit with an attack, but there are some qualifiers, and it's a 1d6 of extra damage for now. There are some qualifiers. We need advantage on the attack, or our target has to be standing within 5 feet of like one of our allies, basically. And we have to use a ranged or a finesse weapon in order to get that sneak attack damage, hence the whip, right? So this is kind of the main reason why I wanted to go with the rogue for the whip. Again, the only melee finesse weapon that has reach. It allows us to get our sneak attack damage with it, but from 10 feet away. And while yes, we still could get sneak attack from even further away if you were using a ranged weapon, there are so many great ways to add damage to melee attacks that ranged weapon users just don't get, right? 2 of which we've already mentioned, but there are more on the way. And so it just feels pretty cool to be able to like get that sneak attack damage while also maintaining a safe distance, because we have reach and we're in a place that the enemy can't usually even get to, so as to avoid getting hit in return. The whip is kind of the only weapon that will let us do both of those things, I think. So at level 4, we're a rogue 2, and we get cunning action, like I've talked about. As a bonus action, you can dash, disengage, or hide, and those usually take an action for most characters. That's very nice if we need it, but again, our characters shouldn't need to disengage too often unless they're fighting creatures with reach or like other flying creatures, I guess. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, so just hang on. For those of you that are squirming in your seat saying, I don't know if this will work as well as you think it will, give me a minute. At level 5, we're a rogue 3. Our sneak attack damage goes up to a 2d6, and we get to choose our subclass, our roguish archetype. And I actually envision 2 potential options here. First, the assassin. If you really want to focus on like getting the drop on your enemies and hitting really, really hard right at the beginning of combat, it's a great option, because as an assassin, attacks against a surprise target, they have advantage. They all have advantage, and they automatically are a critical hit. If they hit, which means tons of extra damage if we're adding all these extra dice, right, for our big burst round. I love the assassin subclass. The only challenge with it and the problem with it is, you have to get surprise. Getting surprise on your enemies can often be a little complicated. It's never a guarantee. I'm gonna point up here to the corner. For those watching this on my YouTube channel, feel free to check out a sliding into my DMs episode that we did talking about surprise and kind of the pros and cons and tips and the mechanics of it and challenges with it and all those kinds of things. So anyway, right. So assassin's great. For me, I think I want to go with the arcane trickster archetype here. Hence the Loki references, right? Sure. Arcane tricksters are fantastic. I use them a lot actually in my rogue builds because they just bring a lot of versatility with their spell casting, abilities. So at level 3 as an arcane trickster, you get some nice features. First up, you get Mage Hand, Ledger Domain. This is great for utility and roleplay. We learn the Mage Hand cantrip, but it's invisible. And we can use it to pick locks and disarm traps from a distance, keeping us safer if we fail to disarm a trap and it goes off or something like that, right? You can even use it to pick pockets and invisibly pick somebody else's pocket from 30 feet away or whatever. So even if you fail, they might not know that it was you trying to pick the pocket, right? So lots of fun hijinks to be had with Mage Hand, Ledger Domain. But then you also get other spells, right? So we get cantrips, some wizard cantrips, some wizard spells. So in addition to Mage Hand, I would recommend taking Message to allow for communicating with our allies when we're scouting ahead, and you can kind of message back to your friends, which is useful. But then most importantly, Booming Blade, as people are probably predicting in the chat if I pause to read, I guess. Booming Blade is absolutely perfect for us. When we cast it, we make a weapon attack as part of the casting, and if the attack hits, the enemy will take an extra 1d8 thunder damage, because we're 5th level now. So we get that damage right now. So again, it's just a crack. And then the enemy that we hit is sheathed in energy that causes them to take 2d8 more damage if they willingly move before our next turn. When I crunch the numbers, which I'm going to do in a minute here, on how much damage we can expect to do, I'm going to assume that the target is moving every turn and taking that extra damage, and I'll explain why in a minute. But yeah, this is absolutely perfect for us. As for other first level spells that we can get, we do have some restrictions. We can learn 3 total first level spells, but 2 of them have to be from the enchantment or illusion schools of magic. And for those, I would probably just say take something that doesn't require a saving throw, as our intelligence is really garbage, and that's what the difficulty check is based on here for arcane tricksters. And take something that can mostly be used for control or utility, out of combat. We're not going to plan on using these spells for damage in combat right now. Sleep is a potentially good one, as you can put creatures to sleep based on their hit points. There's no saving throw for those. It doesn't scale very well. We could swap it out later. But as for the 3rd level spell that can be from any school of magic, we definitely want to take Find Familiar. And you might need to add this. So for those who watch my channel, they know I use this spell a lot. It's a great way to get ourselves advantage on 1 attack per turn. And we're only making 1 attack per turn, so it's going to give us advantage on that all-important, big, huge whip crack attack, right? For those who are not familiar with the Find Familiar spell, pun intended, sorry. Here's how it works. So you summon a little pet. I would recommend the owl, and more on that in a minute. But then that pet can scout for you. They can see and hear. You can see and hear through its eyes and ears, basically, if you incapacitate yourself, essentially. But then in combat, it can't attack, but it can take the help action, which means that it can go distract the enemy, flutter in their face, whatever, pinch their bum, and thereby grant advantage on the next attack that's made against that enemy. Now, as far as I can tell, based on what I've seen and heard and people that I've talked to, like at most tables, that the way that dungeon masters will rule that is they'll say, you can grant help, you can grant advantage to like whoever you want. I don't care. Rules as written, it just says, the familiar rolls its own initiative, and then it takes its action, it takes its help action, and the next attack that's made against that creature has advantage. Again, this is another one that I did a little slide into my DMs episode on, that you can find right there, where we sort of talk about how does this work, rules as written, how does it work at most tables, how does it work at all technically, and how can we, work this to our advantage to get advantage. But I'm just going to assume that you're going to be able to use the familiar to grant yourself advantage on your attack. The reason that I recommend an owl is because they have the flyby feature, which lets them fly in, distract the enemy, take their help action, right, and then fly away without taking an attack of opportunity, thus keeping them much safer. And plus, I mean, an Aarakocra with a pet owl, right? Like, come on, can we be any cuter? Could we even consider taking a non-feathered familiar? I don't think so. I think it's got to be the owl. So anyway, now we have a pet owl with us. At level 6, we are a rogue level 4, and we get our first ability score increase or feat. And here's the thing. Booming Blade has one little problem with it, and it is that the range of Booming Blade is self 5 feet. So you cast it essentially on yourself, and then you have to make a melee weapon attack within 5 feet. Meaning that it would only work if we're making attacks against an enemy that's right next to us, thus sort of negating the whole point of taking the whip and having reach, right?
Yeah.
So the first feat we get, as much as I would love for it to be something to bump our dexterity, I think has to be Spell Sniper. It's the first time I've used this feat in a build, actually. So among other things, this feat tells us that when we cast a spell that requires us to make an attack roll, the spell's range is doubled. So now, with this feat, the range on Booming Blade should be 10 feet instead of 5, and we're free to, boom away from our whip, with our whip from the normal, reach of 10 feet. So hopefully we were able to get through level 5 quickly, because for that one brief level we had Booming Blade, but we didn't have Spell Sniper, and so we were either like making attacks from 5 feet away or just not using Booming Blade, right? One thing to note about this feat, if you decided to go Assassin instead of Arcane Trickster, this feat gives us a free cantrip that requires an attack roll. So long as we already have the ability to cast spells, which we do thanks to our Paladin level. So you could pick up Booming Blade as your free cantrip here and not worry about having to take like a different feat or a multi-class to get that Booming Blade cantrip, just by taking this feat. And you could go Assassin and not have to dip into something else to pick up spells, right? You wouldn't have the familiar and the advantage that goes with it, but against a surprised enemy anyway, when where you're doing your big burst damage as an assassin, like I've mentioned, you'll have advantage regardless. So it's kind of some nice synergy there if you wanted to go assassin. All right, time to check in on the numbers. So yeah, for those who don't know, I call them damage reports at levels 6, 9, 13, and 17. And so it's time for the first one at level 6. Here is what our attack looks like during our burst round of damage. First off, we want to target a melee enemy, ideally, that isn't yet standing next to any of our allies, if possible, okay? We have our familiar take the help action so that we can get advantage. Then we fly over our enemies. We cast Thunderous Smite as a bonus action, and then as our action, we Booming Blade, which is a cantrip, so it is permissible, even though we cast a spell as our bonus action, right? And we make our attack. If it hits, we also burn a Divine Smite, a spell slot for Divine Smite, and apply our sneak attack damage since we had advantage on the attack. Assuming the attack lands, we get a d4 for our whip, plus 2d6 for sneak attack damage, plus 2d6 for Thunderous Smite, plus 2d8 for Divine Smite, plus 1d8 for Booming Blade, plus 3 for our dexterity mod, and plus 2 for our dueling feat. And then on the enemy's turn, if they're still alive, they are either going to stand there doing, and they're a melee enemy, right? They're either going to stand there doing nothing, which is a huge win for us, or they're going to have to move up to make an attack against somebody that can't get to us. We're 10 feet in the air. So they're going to move up to try and attack probably one of our allies, thus triggering the 2d8 from Booming Blade when they move, right? So altogether, that's 1d4 plus 4d6 plus 5d8 plus 5 for that single attack. And they have to make a strength saving throw or be pushed back 10 feet and knocked prone.
I can't even do that math. I can't.
Well, I've done it for you. So against an enemy with a 10 armor class, on average, you would do 47 damage with that one attack. And against an enemy with a 15 armor class, which is probably a little more average for a level 6, campaign, it would be almost as good. It'd be 41 damage. 41 damage with that single attack. So that's fun. Now, some of you may be saying to yourself, like, okay, my DM would never let me get away with this, right? If I tried to be a character who could fly over the heads of their enemies, constantly attacking them from 10 feet away and doing all of this damage, but like being kind of not immune, but very difficult to get to, my DM would just like start making every single enemy have like strong ranged options or nets or reach weapons themselves, or like every enemy can fly now, so that they can counter me. First off, let me just say, and I've had this conversation on my channel many times, but in my opinion, a good dungeon master doesn't focus all of their energy on finding ways to counter their players, right? You can still make it challenging while still allowing your player to bring their cool, fun, unique, powerful like character concept to fruition without just like straight up raining on their parade, with combat encounters that are each designed to make their player's character feel like less powerful. But also, here's the thing. For those who don't know, like I compare the different builds that I do to each other, and I keep like a master spreadsheet you can see in like the video description, on my YouTube channel for each video, kind of comparing other burst damage builds to one another in this case. And if you look at that, you will realize that like comparing this build and this damage to other burst or nova damage builds that I've done, like to be honest, this damage is not particularly amazing. It's nice. It's not crazy. It's less than any other Nova build that I've done. And after this big round that we just talked about, like you'll have one more spell slot to smite with until you take a long rest, right? Meaning that your damage is going way down. So, I think you've got a great argument to say, listen, my DM, who is my friend and whom I love, please don't feel like you have to counter my character with every single combat, right? Yes, being able to attack from melee with relative safety might feel really powerful, maybe overpowered, but it's not like I'm just totally steamrolling over all of your combat encounters, right? Of course, there will be some ranged enemies once in a while, or flying enemies, or even some enemies with stuns and nets or reach weapons, but trying to make every encounter that's going overboard simply to counter like the good but not great damage that I'm putting out there is unnecessary and is making the game less fun for me, right? So anyway, that's my little soapbox spiel on DMs and trying to counter your character's builds.
Yeah. There are always opportunities for DMs and their NPCs and NPC bad guys and all that to throw a monkey wrench into all the wonderful joy that we want to have. Especially having a flying character, any kind of spell that would stun or sleep or anything immediately causes damage.
Restrain.
Restrain anything. Mm-hmm. You fall like a rock.
Yep.
So
1d6 damage for falling.
Yeah.
Every 10 feet.
Every 10 feet. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. At level 7, I think our character comes upon a little bit of a crossroads. What we really want at this point, I think, is to like increase our spell slots as quickly as possible so that we can more regularly smite and for bigger, damage. As a high charisma character, I think there are two ways to go. Sorcerer or bard. I don't think Warlock is a great option here because even though they reset on a short rest, their spell slots, they just have fewer spell slots. They don't take advantage either of like the little bit of spellcaster multiclassing that we've already done because Warlock spells and everyone else's spells don't mingle, right? Sorcerer, on the one hand, would let us, among other things, quicken Booming Blade. So we could do a quicken spell meta magic, cast Booming Blade as a bonus action, and then as our action, cast Booming Blade again, right? And so we'd get like 2 big Booming Blade attacks in a single turn. And that's awesome. I prefer Bard here, I think, for a number of reasons. One, I think it meshes a little better with the theme and the story of the character that I'm kind of envisioning for this character. 2, I've done a lot of sorcerer levels in my character builds lately, and I'm interested in exploring something else right now. It's been a minute since I've done any Bard levels, and so I'm just kind of more curious in going that route. But then 3, even though the extra damage that we do pick up from Bard will be slightly lower than like a double Booming Blade in a single round, right? It's not actually lower by that much, and it lets us do burst damage a little more frequently, and eventually a lot more frequently, which is why I mentioned at the beginning that this character ends up being a bit of almost like a hybrid between sustained damage and burst damage. So let's get into the Bard. At level 7, we are a Bard 1, and so I think for me, as far as like this character's story goes, I go back to the idea of being given like an assignment from your god or from your sergeant or whatever to like infiltrate an enemy organization, right? You've learned some subterfuge and you've even like been empowered with a little arcane trickery, but now, with sort of a roguish foundation complete under you, you're going to take advantage of your natural charisma and maybe even the talent that you've always had for like music or elocution, storytelling, I don't know, but to actually get your foot in the door with this enemy organization that you're trying to infiltrate, you are going to learn the skills of a bard, and this will be your face, your cover for your infiltration, okay? As a level 1 bard, we get Bardic Inspiration, that quintessential bardic ability. As a bonus action, you can grant a d6 to an ally within 60 feet who can hear you, which they can use on an ability check, on an attack roll, or a saving throw within the next 10 minutes. For now, you can use it charisma modifier times per long rest. So for us, that's 3. We have a 16 charisma, so we get it 3 times per long rest. You also get spells, of course, cantrips and first level bard spells here, but I'm not really going to recommend any in particular because I don't think we're going to really be using any in combat, at least not during our big Nova round of damage, right? So I would just say feel free to take whatever seems the most fun or useful or powerful. Again, probably focusing on, like rituals that you can cast without spending a spell slot, like Identify or Detect Magic, and things that are unique to bards like Vicious Mockery or Dissonant Whispers, right?
I just have this image in my head, and it's completely the Polly Want a Cracker kind of voice with Vicious Mockery. To have the Aarakocra flying above the battlefield and just mocking
and just taunting
people,
I love it.
People with this awful parrot
just
voice.
copying them, like if they say something, just being like, I love it.
That's great.
That's perfect. Another thing to keep in mind, we have second level spell slots now. So because of the way that multi-classing works, right, with spellcasting classes, we actually have 2 second level spell slots now, even though we don't know any second level spells, right? So that's nice for us for Divine Smite and for our other Smite because we can now upscale those. Divine Smite would be a 3d8 of damage, and as much as I love Thunderous Smite for thematic reasons, because I really love the idea of that whip really cracking, right? We're probably better off for our burst round here using Searing Smite now as a second level spell slot. It's similar to Thunderous Smite in that like you cast it as a bonus action and then your next attack does extra damage, but instead of thunder damage, it's fire damage. And if the target fails a Constitution saving throw, they're on fire. and they take 1d6 fire damage each turn until they make their Constitution saving throw, or they or an ally of theirs like uses their action to extinguish the flame, which honestly is probably the best alternative because it would mean an entire enemy turn wasted, right? As a first level spell, the initial hit is only a 1d6 of fire damage, but unlike Thunderous Smite, which doesn't scale for some stupid reason, in my opinion, this actually does. And so as a second level spell, it'll do 2d6 damage, just like Thunderous Smite, plus the 1d6, burning damage that you get every round. For simplicity's sake, when I crunch the numbers from here, I'm just going to assume that you get like one turn of burning out of it, even though you might get more, but you also might get none, right? If they make their save. So just to keep it simple, I'm going to just assume an extra 1d6 of damage per turn from Searing Smite going forward. At level 2, that looks so freaking cool. Look at that whip. At level 8, you're a bard too. And you get Jack of all trades. So this is a fantastic way to make you like super well-rounded, right? If you're not proficient in a skill, you can add half of your proficiency bonus rounded down when you make an ability check. So now you're at least half proficient in everything. And then with all of your expertises that we're gonna end up with, you're gonna be an incredibly skilled character. You also get Song of Rest. So you're a really great companion to have around, because between, the little bit of healing that you get from like lay on hands and spells and things, your great rogue abilities that have fantastic utility, occasional inspiration, and now this Song of Rest, you're a pretty nice little support and utility character. So Song of Rest, it lets you sing a song or tell a tale during a short rest that will let everyone add an extra d6 of healing if they spend hit dice to recover their hit points. So just a nice little boon for you and your party. Okay, at level 9, you're a Bard 3. This is a huge level for us. So first off, at level 3, Bards get their Bard College, their subclass. And we are going with College of Whispers. Here's what we read about College of Whispers. Most folk are happy to welcome a bard into their midst. Bards of the College of Whispers use this to their advantage, like we are as we try and infiltrate this enemy organization, right? They appear to be like other bards, sharing news, singing songs, and telling tales to the audiences they gather. In truth, the College of Whispers teaches its students that they are wolves among sheep. These bards use their knowledge and magic to uncover secrets and turn them against others through extortion and threats. This is Liliana from Dragon Age, for those who enjoy that game. She's one of my favorite characters from that series. Anyway, it's just perfect for like our story of infiltration and subterfuge, and pairs very nicely with Rogue, I think, of all the bard classes. And also, it's going to give us some nice damage for our burst round. So, first up, as a College of Whispers bard, we get Words of Terror, and this is delicious. This is once per short rest. If we spend 1 minute, so I don't see this getting used a lot in game, unless you guys have very different games or play your characters very differently than I do. But we have to spend 1 minute speaking to a humanoid alone. Then at the end of that minute, we can force them to make a wisdom save or be frightened of us for an hour. Which means, if they're frightened, they can't willingly move towards us, and they have disadvantage on all ability checks and attacks as long as they can see us. This is so sinister. I feel like our paladin might be getting like a little too much into character here. They're like super method, and they're losing their way a little bit as they strike fear into the hearts of their of their enemies, maybe by whispering horrible, nightmarish nothings in their ear. And then we also get Psychic Blades. And this is the main reason why I wanted to go Bard, and Whispers Bard in particular. So when I did my Crit Fisher build, here we go, a little card there if you're watching on YouTube, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people wanted me to take Bard levels for this ability, but I kind of had to explain it didn't quite work for that character because that character had a pretty low charisma, and we're told here that once per turn, when we hit with a weapon attack, we can burn a use of our Bardic Inspiration to deal an extra 2d6 psychic damage to the target. But remember, we only get a number of bardic inspirations equal to our charisma modifier per day for now. So it doesn't work very well unless you've got it doesn't do much for you unless you've got a decent charisma score, right? So this is a nice way to add some solid damage on our Nova round. Couple other things we get here. So we get second level bard spells. Same as before, pick your favorites. I'm not going to recommend any. It's your choice. Focus on out of combat, utility or support, etc. We get another round of expertise. So like rogues, bards get expertise. So now we get to pick 2 more skills that we're proficient in and double our proficiency bonus in them. I think if it were me, again, trying to emphasize like the rogue utility function that I'm trying to fill with this character, I would probably go with perception to be like better at detecting traps and hidden doors and things, and then maybe like sleight of hand or maybe investigation. But you pick what you think you need most for your character. A level 3. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, we also get 3rd level spell slots now. So Divine Smite hits for 4d8 damage, and Searing Smite will be 4d6 if we count 1 round of burning after you hit, right? So now our tactics, so we're doing another damage report, level 9 damage report. Our tactics during our Nova round are basically the same, but everything just hits a little harder. And we're also adding 2d6 psychic damage for Psychic Blades from Whisper's Bard. So against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we are now doing 72 damage on average with that one massive crack of the whip. And against an enemy with a 16 armor class, it's 62 damage. Quite a bit better, but again, still low compared to other Nova builds. The nice thing, though, that I will mention is, at this level, we're kind of in a place now where we can do like almost this level of damage for 3 rounds per long rest. We have 3 Psychic Blade uses, enough spells to like Searing Smite and Divine Smite, 3 times per long rest, and actually still have a couple of spell slots left over. So this ends up being like I've said, a little bit of a hybrid between like a Nova or burst damage build and a sustained damage build. It's more like a little 3-round burst that you'd get from a little machine gun or something. It's like so over 3 rounds you do put out some really nice damage, but again, that's per long rest for now, so it's not super sustainable, but that will change shortly. Okay, do you want me to just keep going?
You're doing amazing. That's where that's one of the breaking points. Let's jump in the chat real quick and just see what's going on in here. So a lot of people are commenting and really keeping up great with what you're saying. I'm loving the flavor that the chat is putting in with this.
Yeah.
Call me Toucan Sam
bird
one
puns.
more time. It's all the bird puns. So many bird puns.
The bird song of rest.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, look, I appreciate the help, but the squawking
Polly
needs to stop.
No, this is a good one. More like Polly is the cracker. Wow. That's grade A pun comedy right there.
How would the sorcerer with the magic touch deal with this guy? He'd use telekinesis to bring him closer.
Yeah. Or hold person.
Yeah.
Well, but they can't. I mean, you could cast fly on yourself. You could touch yourself, cast fly, and then you get up there. I don't know.
Lots of options.
All right. Let's jump. Let's keep going. So at level 10, you are a bard. Level 4, you get another ability score increase for feat, finally. So we've been sitting on a 17 dexterity this whole time, which makes me a little crazy. I hate odd numbered ability scores. They just I have nightmares at night. I wake up in a cold sweat about having a 17 dexterity. So I want to take a half feat here that will give me a +1 to my dex, and then something else that's nice. So I think the best option of all of what's available to us is the slasher feat. This is a nice little support feature, actually, primarily. So you get to take a +1 to your dexterity or your strength. We'd go dexterity, obviously. And then once per turn, when you hit with a slashing attack, and our whip does slashing damage. So when you hit with a slashing attack, the creature's move speed is reduced by 10. So that could be really nice to potentially help keep allies safe. And also, if we crit with that attack, then they have disadvantage on all attack rolls until our next turn, which is even better. So it's just a kind of a nice way to almost protect the rest of your party members with your whip attacks. And I kind of like, the idea of sort of maiming somebody with that whip and making, you've hobbled them now somehow or something, right? At level 11, we are a Bard 5, and this is another huge level for us. So our Psychic Blades jumps up to 3d6 when we use it instead of 2d6. Our Booming Blade, as a character at level 11, goes from 1d8 and 2d8 when they move to 2d8 on the attack and 3d8 if they move. We get our Bardic Inspiration goes to a d8 instead of a d6, assuming you ever use it for anything other than selfishly, using it for Psychic Blades. And then we get Font of Inspiration, and this is probably the main reason why I wanted to go Bard all the way to 5. There were a lot of good reasons, obviously, but now our Bardic Inspirations and thus, our Psychic Blades reset on a short rest instead of a long rest, meaning we can use them 3 times per short rest, which just really helps, our ability to pump out more consistent, bursty damage, right? Sure. We also have 4th level spell slots now, just one, but we have a 4th level spell slot, and that's as high as Divine Smite goes. It caps at 5d8, so we are capped now for our smite damage. Again, we only have one of them, but we'll get more later. And then we do get 3rd level Bard spells, and the same as always, there's tons of awesome ones. I would say your choice. Focus on what's useful and powerful and fun. Not going to really be using any of them for our combat. You got to take Tiny Hut, because Tiny Hut is amazing and it's a ritual. So take Tiny Hut. Otherwise, take what you want. At level 12, we are a Rogue 5. And I think that, with that 5th level Whispers Bard under our belt, it's just time to go back to Rogue, get our sneak attack damage higher, as well as other great rogue features that we've been delaying. So I think that's the best path for us going forward for the rest of the build, really. So our sneak attack as a Rogue 5 goes up to 3d6 once per turn. And then we get the Uncanny Dodge feature, which is really great for those times that, an enemy actually does manage to hit us, whether with a ranged attack or whatever. We can use our reaction to have the damage as long as we see it, as long as we see them, attacking us. At level 13, we're a Rogue 6, and we get another round of expertise. So this is amazing. We get a 5th and 6th skill that we're proficient in, and we should have that many proficiencies, because when you multi-class into Rogue and Bard, we do actually get to pick one of the skills that they're proficient in to become proficient in. So between Paladin, Rogue, Bard, our background, we should have plenty of skills to choose from still here. And I would just say, pick whichever ones you think are the most important to put your expertise in. So, level 13 damage report. The only thing that's changed from last time at level 9 is that we now have 2 4th level spell slots, because we hit Rogue 6, and that's going to bump us up for a multi-classing spellcaster. So we have 2 4th level spell slots, meaning our Divine Smite does 5d8 damage and Searing Smite does 5d6, again counting just 1d6 for burning. We've also increased our Dexterity finally, and Psychic Blades is doing 3d6 per hit instead of 2d6, and Booming Blade damage went up as well, so everything kind of went up. So against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would on average do 100 damage with that one whip attack. And against an enemy with a 17 armor class, it's 89 damage with that almighty whip crack.
With a whip.
Exactly. Which just feels awesome, right?
That's absurd to me.
So we broke the Centennial Barrier, at least against an enemy with the 10 AC, which is very uncommon at level 13. I appreciate that. But anyway. So so here's the nice thing. Again, we could fairly reliably do close to that level of damage a good 6 times or so per long rest now, instead of just 1, right? Because we have 12 spell slots. Psychic Blades resets on a short rest. Of course, the damage does go down a little bit if you're smiting with lower level spell slots, right? Which we would be doing eventually.
Sure.
But anyway, it's just cool to kind of have several rounds of like mini burst damage almost,
For sure.
which is fun. Okay, at level 14, we're coming down the home stretch. How are we doing on time? All right, we're doing great. At level 14, we are a rogue 7. Our sneak attack goes up to a 4d6. We get evasion, and we've been waiting a long time for this little gem. It makes fireballs and other, like make a dexterity saving throw or take damage. All of those things in the game, it turns them into trifles. If we fail our dex save, we take half damage, and if we make our dexterity save, we take no damage against those types of, make a dex save or take damage things. Second level wizard spells we also get here finally as an arcane trickster, level 7. There's a lot of great spells to choose from, lots of good enchantment and illusion ones as well. None that we'd be using in combat, I don't think, at least not for our burst round of damage. So again, I'm just going to say pick your favorites. There's lots of good ones to choose from. At level 15, we are a rogue 8, and we get an ability score increase or feat again. And I'm going to say that we bump our dexterity to 20. It took forever, and I hate that, but, we got there eventually. A lot of multi-classing will do that to you, and delay your ability score increases. But we made it, finally. At level 16, we are a rogue level 9, and our sneak attack goes up to a 5d6 now, once per turn. And we get 5th level spell slots. That does not benefit Divine Smite in any way because, like I say, it kind of caps at a 4th level spell slot. But Searing Smite would go up by 1d6 if we were to upcast Searing Smite. So that's kind of what I'd plan on doing, I think. And then we also get Magical Ambush as an Arcane Trickster. So Magical Ambush, if you're hidden from a creature when you cast a spell on them, they have disadvantage on the saving throw. Now, if we're casting a wizard spell, this would be pretty lame since our intelligence and therefore our difficulty check, our DC, is garbage, right, for our wizard spells. So they would probably make the save anyway, even with disadvantage. However, the feature very specifically does not say that it has to be a wizard spell. It just says when you cast a spell. So it could be something you picked from your bard levels. And our charisma is half decent, right? So sneaking up on your enemies, let's say, and casting like Crown of Madness on one of them, and having like that allows you to like take control of an enemy essentially, and then they start attacking their allies. And so now like amongst the group of orcs, one of them is under your control, and they all start fighting with each other until that orc that you're controlling probably dies, right, before the fight even begins. And now they're down one character. That's fantastic, and I love it. And it could lead to lots of cool, fun things. Final level, I actually only go to level 17 on my builds, only because I feel like so few of us play the game at these high levels, especially all the way to 20. And usually by the time we get to 17, it's fairly apparent, where to go from here. So anyway, at level 17, you're a rogue level 10. And rogues are unique in that they get another ability score increase or feat at level 10. There are a lot of great options that you could go with here. I think the one that I would most want to take would be to like bump my charisma from a 16 to an 18, primarily to give me one more use of psychic blades per short rest, but also for like the aforementioned bard spell saving throw difficulty check, right? And even, of course, your out of combat skill checks, persuasion checks, things like that, and your saving throw too. I think there's a little bit of there's some good mileage we can get out of having a higher charisma. So that's probably what I do. Also, one note: Booming Blade here at level 17 jumps to a 3d8 on the initial attack and a 4d8 if and when they move. So our final damage report has us doing a lot more sneak attack damage, increased booming blade damage, with a capped dexterity bonus finally, and Searing Smite hitting for 6d6 if we use a 5th level spell slot on it, and they burn for 1 round, right? For a grand total at level 17 on that one attack of 1d4, 14d6, 12d8, plus 7 on that one crack of the whip. And so against an enemy with a 10 armor class, you'd be doing 123 damage on average. And against an enemy with an 18 armor class, it would be 113, still over 100 damage with the one attack, which
with a whip
is awesome. With a whip, with a D4, the lowly, humble whip.
Like,
yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I just like anytime I make a character, the last weapon I'm thinking of is a whip.
Right. Exactly. And that's why it's so fun to try and optimize something that is kind of thought of as suboptimal, right?
There's so much flavor that you can do with a whip too. I mean, it's absolutely a flavor weapon for the game.
Yes. Speaking of flavor, so I promised an alternative path, and so let me just maybe very quickly mention that. After you're level 6 and you get your Pally 2 Rogue 4, right? That's when I went Bard levels. We could go a different route to get more damage out of our Nova round, and it's basically this: you go Sorcerer levels instead of Bard, like I had talked about. You quicken spell Booming Blade, and then as your bonus action, and then Booming Blade again as your action. For the subclass on the Sorcerer, I probably go Wild Magic, which is my least favorite thing in D&D, but it gives you an on-demand advantage on that second Booming Blade, because remember, Familiar only gives you advantage on one attack, right? So now you'd have advantage on both of those Booming Blade attacks. Storm Sorcery is way better thematically, but Storm Sorcery unfortunately is designed really poorly and doesn't really do much for us. I don't think. I'm not a fan. It could be cool. It ends up not being that cool. But anyway, once you get to 4th level spell slots as a sorcerer, then I would actually go 3 levels of fighter before going back to rogue. That's at character level 12, because you get action surge first of all.
Sure.
So then you do 3 booming blades in a single turn, right? And I would pick up the battle master archetype. So when I said speaking of flavor, this is what I was going to get at, because as a battle master, you could pick up things like you get these maneuvers, right, that let you do things like take a trip attack, and that really does kind of emulate coiling your whip around somebody's feet, right, and tripping them up or something like that, which is really cool, and it adds a little extra damage too. And so, as amazing as all that sounds, 3 attacks instead of 1, right? It might not be quite as amazing as some people may think, because you are giving up Psychic Blades, you're giving up Searing Smite, you're giving up some sneak attack damage, but it is a good 30% or so more damage on that one big round when compared to the route that we took. However, you do burn through your resources a lot more quickly, and so you can really only do that level of damage once per short rest. But again, if your object is to really just hit as hard as possible for one big Nova round, that would probably be the way to go. So yeah, I'll admit, yeah, exactly. Or just fly a little bit higher and just hurl insults at the enemy until combat's over. I will admit, I didn't think I would be able to stretch this much damage out of a whip either. I think my favorite part of it, though, is the fact that we can do all of this damage from melee and still stay relatively safe from enemy attackers most of the time, at most tables. I had a ton of fun coming up with it, and I'd really love to try it out in game and see if it performs as well as I think it would. But yeah, that's the episode for the week from my perspective. So I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Well, we didn't quite get everything wrapped up. We still have about 9 minutes left in the show.
It looks amazing.
So we still got some work to do on this, obviously.
Yeah.
3 booming blades. I dare you to move. So the whole concept of that you're bringing forward with these videos, with the optimized videos, when I first thought about it, I struggled, because every game that I've played in has been so more about the RP aspect of the game. A lot
The story, the character
story,
development.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so some people that I talked to, like in passing, I brought up, what you're doing here, and they're like, "Gosh, man, that turns it into
Optimizers.
A video game."
Yeah.
It
this isn't a tactics game; it's a story.
And to be fair, it's both. It absolutely is both.
Yeah.
There are definitely two sides to this coin. This game is so great because it has that RP aspect to it. It gives you the opportunity to interact with your friends at the table and to tell a great story. But at the same time, who doesn't love, coming up with the strategy of how to handle the difficult situations? And which is what I think is what's great about what you're doing, is because you're taking the opportunity of building your character, and some people might have a plan for what they want with their character as they go. Already, like from level 1, they know what they want to do. I've always been the kind of person that as we play, depending on how the RP happens, that dictates where my character goes.
You're gonna wing it a little bit.
I wing it with
no pun intended.
Single character.
Sorry.
Gosh.
I know, it's terrible.
So many groans.
I know. I do more accidental puns than otherwise. But anyway.
Great for a DM to use as the big bag. Absolutely. No.
And I actually get a lot of those. A lot of comments on my videos would be like, "This is a great idea for like the big bad in my campaign. Thank you."
Sure.
Like, oh, sorry to all of your players.
So sorry.
I will. Maybe I'll just play off of what you were saying. When I first started the channel, I was initially getting so I called the channel D&D Optimized. That was the name of the channel.
Sure.
And after 8 months or so and some nice growth and things were going really well, I kind of was struggling a little bit and feeling like, I feel like there are a lot of people who play D&D who, when they see that word, that's a trigger word for them, right? They see optimized and they're like, nope. Like, this dude ruins the game. Like, you are everything that I hate about D&D. Like, you turn it into the numbers, and it's supposed to be about the story and the role play and having fun and things like that.
Well, it doesn't have to be.
Well, right. So my take has always been, just and to be fair, I think that there are a lot of people who like to optimize and min-max and things like that kind of act like gatekeepers. And like to tell people that they're doing it wrong.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? And sure. So like nobody wants somebody at their table acting that way and being that way, right? But at the same time, just like you don't want somebody else telling you like that your form of having fun is wrong or invalid. I think there are a lot of people like myself who, like, part of the fun of D&D is like creating a character that feels really cool and fun, but also like really powerful to play in game. This is a game about being a hero, right? And growing and like becoming like this champion. And so for me that is part of it. And I think as long as you don't let the numbers get too much in the way of like telling the story and role playing and creating a character and being true to that character and their arc and all that kind of stuff, like I think you can have both at a table. And it's just a matter of talking to one another, talking about expectations, talking about what you like in the game, what's fun for you and what's fun for you, and we can all play different play styles. I'm the only one at my table that optimizes characters like I do. And if you watch our live play games that we post, there you go, Tales of Veneria, you'll see that, right? I'm kind of always thinking about like, how can I get the most damage out of this character or whatever, and everybody else is just like not thinking about that so much. Like, they think about it, obviously, some, you know what I mean, but it's not like the most important thing for them. And we all like get along and have a lot of fun. And frankly, a lot of times our DM, I think, might give somebody else like a little buff here or there to kind of maybe help bring their level up a little bit more on what they're doing and things like that. And like I don't mind that. Like, that's okay. Like, I'm having fun playing the character that I want to play. Everybody else is having fun playing the character that they want to play, and
Yeah.
it's a good time.
How often does that actually become an issue where your character that is optimized and may have the best?
Sure.
How often does that become an issue at the table where they? I mean, just from your personal experience, has that become a problem, or are they kind of in awe of what you're doing?
No,
Or
no, they're much better at keeping me humble than bolstering my ego. And I love them with all my heart. They're dear friends, and we have a lot of fun when we play. I guess I would have to say that's probably a better question for them. It's never that I know of anyway. Like, no one's ever been like, dude, you're kind of like taking the wind out of everybody's sails because like you're doing all this damage and I'm doing not that much damage, and it's like, man. I can definitely see it being an issue, though, no question. Like, not every table has the camaraderie and chemistry, frankly, that I think we've managed to develop. And for that matter, there may be a little disgruntlement that they just haven't felt emboldened enough to talk to me about, in which case, they might one day. But again, I think with all things, like, it's just a matter of like talking it out, talking with your DM, talking with the other players, and being like, hey, this has kind of become something that's disruptive at the table a little bit, and people aren't having as much fun because they feel overshadowed, or whatever. And either maybe you can help them if they're open to it. Like, well, I was thinking about this, and as long as you're not like being mansplaining and like telling them that they're doing it wrong or whatever, like I'd be happy to offer some suggestions to you guys if you're willing to, take that, or like, if we want to find ways to like tone me down, like sure. That's okay too. You know what I mean? And that's going to be up to the DM and to the players and everything at your table. But I don't think any like bad blood can't be overcome with communication. So.
I'll be honest. Like, I'm the guy. Whenever I'm playing a video game, I'm the completionist that wants to max the level, that wants to hit God mode as soon as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Like when I'm playing Skyrim, enchanting, smithing, and archery are always the first ones to hit. And slowly behind that comes sneak.
Yep.
But. The opportunity to do that in D&D is, I mean, it's way less because, like you said, it's hard to be in a campaign that gets to those levels.
Yes.
It's that is a difficult feat.
Which is why, like, I've always been kind of annoyed because a lot of times you'll see, if you go on, like, there are some subreddits out there, like 3D6 is a really good one, or there's a forum called Giants in the Playground, I think is what it's called. Anyway, these like forums and subreddits and things that are sort of dedicated to like, essentially optimizing characters. And it seems like without fail, almost all of them go, here's my level 20 character build. Like, look at how amazing they do. They do a bazillion damage at level 20. And before I ever started the channel, like, I was always like, okay, but like, who plays the game at level 20? First of all, like, what did you look like at level 1 and level 5 and level 8? Yeah. And sure, like, if every attack that you make hits, but like, do you have advantage? Do you have like what, like not every attack that you make is going to land. So what are you doing, and what does your damage look, at different enemy armor classes? That's going to tell a more complete story of how powerful this character really is. And so that was kind of the impetus that got me to create this channel in the first place. It was like, I want to do a little more complete view of a character, and also try to make them powerful, like, from level 1 all the way to the end, because, like, again, so few of us play the game at those high levels. A lot of us, most of us, I would say, probably stop a typical campaign by level 10, right? So you want to be like good throughout and not just at level 20. So I don't know.
What is your, and I'm not saying that you can't do both, because you can absolutely. Is this guy Donald Ducking it? No, he's got some pants on. He's got a little loincloth going on. Come on. Not Donald.
I can see the wrap.
He's got
Yeah.
the wrap going around the waist.
And it's leather. It's leather armor. So I mean,
He's got leather.
you know.
He's got leather little short greaves on. Come on, man. Jeez, Donald ducking it. That's my favorite quote from the chat tonight. Thank you. You can absolutely optimize your character and do great RP.
Yeah,
You can.
for sure.
You absolutely can.
Yeah, there's
so you
no
don't
reason
have
why you
to
can't do
choose-
both.
You don't have to choose one or the other.
Right.
Leather and whip. Ooh, yeah. Talking about some kind of dungeons. Besides boy birds have. Oh gosh. Wow. What was I gonna? I was just gonna bring something up. Okay, so to those in the chat that are hanging out with us, I'm in a campaign right now that is absolutely nothing but RNG, and I know this would absolutely drive Colby bonkers. The character that I got to roll and create, like everything was RNG dictated. The
Yeah.
character class, the character race,
That
the
gives
stats.
me the heebie-jeebies.
I rolled. I was a human wizard, and I didn't even get to pick my own spells. I had to roll to
Whoa.
see what spells I got.
Breaking out in hives, you can't see it.
It's been so fun.
I bet.
It's been so
I have
fun.
no doubt. I have no doubt.
And
And wild magic. Sorry, wild magic. I'm sure would lead
God.
to so many great moments in
I
game.
love
But
wild magic.
I look at it and just go, no. I want something reliable. I want to know what I'm doing and what's going to happen.
The best part about our game that we haven't had to do yet, but I completely can't stop throwing up. The best part about it so far is when you level up, we've got to the point now where if you level up, you have to roll to see if you stay your class or if you multi-class.
Wow.
And then you don't even get to pick what multi-class. You have to roll it. So
That's intense.
I'm an 8th level wizard. I've gone through 8 levels stuck at wizard. I shouldn't say stuck, but staying at wizard.
I hope you get to 9.
I
Because
wanna
that's
get
when
to-
you get 5th level spells.
I know, but then I also kind of want to hit do fighter and get to level 2 fighter so I can get the action
Surge, yeah.
and just throw out 2. I mean, that's so part of me is like, oh, that stink because I've been working so hard at this and I'm almost so close to that, but it's like, or whatever else it might be.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah. It sounds fun.
So, Colby, what's going to happen is I'm going to get you in a game with me one day, and I'm going to
All right.
make you do nothing but RNG. Absolutely everything is out of your control. You have no say in anything.
As long as it's just like a one shot and I can walk away when I'm done.
No. I'm going to make it be something that's going to at least do at least 3 levels. So you have no control over, or 4 levels. 4 levels. So you can't control if you have to do a feat or ability score. Because you have to roll to see if you do that.
Oof, that's intense.
All right, folks. I tell you what, we've hit what our normal time frame for drawing conclusions now. Colby's done his build, and we made it through. I'm really surprised we got it in the hour and a half. That's amazing.
Yeah. I know, I'm really long-winded. I'm impressed with myself.
This is we gave you some breathing room and let you go. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna finish the build or the illustration here tonight. I'm gonna send that off to Colby so he'll be able to upload it into the final video that he puts up for you guys.
Cool.
But Colby, why don't you jump out there real quick? Tell everyone that's watching who you are, where they can find you, and if you have anything special coming up in the near future.
I do things other than just these optimized character builds. I'll do these once a week, usually. But we also have a slide into my DMs, which is like the talk show portion of the D4 network, where I talk with my friends who are all DMs at one time or another for me. So we just talk about like D&D news, like D&D rulings, and like how would you interpret this rule kind of stuff. And we just kind of talk about how to make sure that everybody at your table is having as much fun as possible, basically. And then I've got some D&D University videos that are sort of like D&D 101 that will teach you how to play if you don't really know much about it, or you want to share it with somebody who you want to introduce the game to. And then we do finally, as the fourth D4, right, as the fourth sort of channel, I guess, or whatever, have our Tales of Veneria, which is our live play, actual play, D&D games. that we post up there weekly as well. So there's a lot of content. I try to get something for everybody up there. I'm coming up on a 1-year anniversary in a week and a half, I think I mentioned early on. So that's kind of the next big thing. And we've had some lovely growth, frankly. For only being 1 year in, I'm almost at 20,000 subscribers, which feels a little crazy. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks to my viewers, really. We've built just the best community. I can't say enough about the people that watch and comment and support us. They're always just, I don't know, you're all just lovely people, and it's just nothing but like positive vibes and positive energy and great, with an occasional troll. Every 1 out of 1,000 comments, maybe, if
Sure.
that, probably less, in fact. But yeah, it's not a gatekeepery community at all. It's just people that are like, oh, what about this? Or did you think about this? Or you got this rule wrong. There's a lot of those.
It's a great forum for expressing ideas, especially about this game that we all love so much. So it's a great place to really share some ideas and what you feel.
Well, thank you. And for those who are watching this on my YouTube channel, the day after or whatever, make sure that you check out Randall. I'll definitely have links to your Instagram, your Twitter, so that people can follow you. I've been so impressed by the artwork that you've done. The last, for those who don't know, the 2 out of the last 3 episodes, I sort of told you the character concept like a couple of days before recording, and like within a few hours you like send over this, hey, like check this out, and then I'll post it in the video and be like, check out this artwork that Randall did for this character, and it's awesome. You're fantastic. So thank you. I'm glad that you reached out in the first place, and this has been a lot of fun.
Colby, I really appreciate you being here. For those of you that don't know, my name is Randall Hampton. I'm the author and illustrator of the Little Game Master series of children's books where Dr. Seuss meets Dungeons and Dragons. It's a great way to introduce your kids to this pastime that we all love. You can find me all over the interwebs at Randall_Hampton, at Randall Hampton on Instagram. I'm here at Geeks Like Us every other Wednesday talking with one or more members of plethora of communities, talking about the IPs that really drive us. If this is your first time here with Geeks Like Us, give us a follow. We'd love to have you back here again for all the different shows that we have on the channel. Go over to our Discord, join the conversation. There are channels for there are threads for all the programs that we have here on Geeks Like Us. You can join our Patreon. We've got a bunch of great perks for that. So it's a lot of fun to have you there. Colby, again, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. Ever since I found your channel and got to watch a few and started watching the builds, I knew this is something that I wanted to do. I thought this would be a lot of fun. So I'm super glad we were able to make it work, and I can't wait to work with you some more. So this has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Everyone out there, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Love you guys. Have a good one.